I'm Sarah, 42, and my husband stood in a courtroom and told a judge he owned half of the company I built from scratch, right before I destroyed his entire life with a single piece of paper. Before I tell you about the moment his face turned ghost white, tell me where you are watching from in the comments. I read every single one of them. You know, they say love is blind. But they don't tell you that sometimes, love isn't just blind, it's deaf, dumb, and incredibly stupid. I was all of those things. But sitting in that courtroom, listening to the hum of the air conditioner and the scratching of the court reporter's machine, I wasn't in love anymore. I was in hell. The courtroom smelled like floor polish and old wood. It was freezing, the kind of cold that seeps right into your bones, but I think the chill was coming from inside me. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my hands folded on my lap. I was squeezing my fingers so hard my knuckles were white, trying to keep them from shaking. Across the aisle, there he was. Mark. He looked perfect. That was the thing about Mark. He always looked perfect. He was wearing the charcoal Armani suit I bought him for his birthday last year. It cost $3,000. I remembered swiping my card for it, feeling happy that I could spoil him. Now, looking at the sharp cut of the fabric against his shoulders, I just felt sick. He sat there, leaning back in his chair, whispering something to his lawyer. He looked relaxed. Confident. Like he was at a country club lunch, not a divorce hearing that would decide the fate of my life's work. And then there was his lawyer. A shark in a cheap suit named Mr. Sterling. Sterling stood up, buttoning his jacket, and walked toward the center of the room. He had this smug little smile plastered on his face. Your Honor, Sterling said, his voice booming. We are not disputing that Ms. Sarah Miller founded Eco Haven. We are simply here to ensure that my client, Mr. Mark Miller, receives his fair and legal share of the assets. Judge Harrison looked over her glasses. She was a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and eyes that looked like they could cut glass. She didn't suffer fools. Get to the point, counselor, she said. Sterling nodded. The point, Your Honor, is that Eco Haven is worth $12 million. And while Ms. Miller was the face of the operation, my client was the backbone. He provided the emotional stability, the financial advice, and the strategic consulting that allowed the company to thrive. I almost laughed out loud. Financial advice? Mark couldn't even balance a checkbook without asking me for help. Emotional stability? The man threw a tantrum if his steak was overcooked. Mark stood up then. He walked to the stand, placed his hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. I watched him. I watched the way he made eye contact with the judge, giving her that charming, boyish smile that used to make my knees weak. It was a performance. It was all a performance. Mr. Miller, his lawyer asked. Did you contribute to the success of Eco Haven? Mark sighed, a long, dramatic exhale. He looked at me, a look of fake sadness in his eyes. I did, he said softly. Sarah, she's a brilliant artist. A visionary. But business? She struggled. I stepped in. I handled the books. I managed the investments. I sacrificed my own career as a financial consultant to build her dream. I built the foundation so she could build the walls. Liar. My lawyer, a woman named Rebecca, stiffened beside me. She started to write furiously on her legal pad. But Mark wasn't done. In fact, Mark continued, his voice getting stronger, we agreed on this partnership years ago. Sarah knew she couldn't do it without me. That's why we signed an agreement. The room went silent. I felt the blood drain from my face. Agreement? What agreement? Sterling walked back to his table and picked up a document. Your Honor, I present Exhibit A. A marital partnership agreement, signed and dated June 15, 2021. In this document, Sarah Miller explicitly grants Mark Miller a 50% stake in Eco Haven in exchange for his consulting services. The courtroom gasped. I heard a murmur ripple through the gallery behind me. I turned my head slightly. My mother was there, her hand covering her mouth. Judge Harrison took the document. She adjusted her glasses and read it. The silence stretched on for what felt like an hour. "Ms. Miller," the judge said, looking at me. "Is this your signature?" Sterling projected the document onto a screen for everyone to see. There it was. My signature. The loops of the S, the sharp tail of the H. It looked exactly like mine. I started to speak, but my throat was dry. Mark looked at me. And then, he did it. He smirked. It wasn't a sad smile anymore. It was a cold, predatory twist of his lips. He winked at me. A tiny, barely perceptible wink. "I got you," his eyes said. "I own you." "Your Honor," Mark said, his voice dripping with false humility. "I don't want to hurt Sarah. I just want what is legally mine. Half the company. That's all." I looked at the blue folder sitting in front of me on the table. It was thin. Just a few sheets of paper inside. But it was heavy. It carried the weight of the last 6 months of my life. The nights I didn't sleep. The tears I cried in my car so my employees wouldn't see. The moment I realized my sister was a snake. I took a deep breath. The air in the courtroom tasted stale, but suddenly, my lungs felt clear. "May I present evidence to the contrary, Your Honor?" Rebecca asked. Mark let out a small, scoffing laugh. "Evidence? It's a notarized contract, Sarah. Give it up." I stood up. I didn't look at Mark. I looked straight at Judge Harrison. "It's not just a contract, Your Honor," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "It's a lie. And I can prove it. But before I tell you what was in that folder, I have to take you back. You need to understand how a smart woman like me, a CEO who managed 200 employees, let a monster into her bed. You need to see the illusion before you can enjoy the destruction." 3 years ago, my life looked perfect on Instagram. I was the CEO of EcoHaven, a sustainable interior design firm based in Austin. We had just hit 8 million in revenue. I was featured in 40 under 40 lists. I had a beautiful house in the hills, a Tesla in the driveway, and a closet full of designer clothes. But the reality? I was exhausted. I was 39 years old and I went home to an empty house every single night. My dinner was usually takeout Thai food eaten over the kitchen sink while I answered emails. I had employees who depended on me, clients who demanded miracles, and a family that constantly asked when I was going to settle down. Success is lonely. Nobody tells you that. You climb to the top of the mountain and realize the air is thin and there's no one there to high-five. That's when I met Mark. It was at a charity gala for ocean conservation. I was standing by the bar, nursing a sparkling water, trying to hide a yawn. I hated these events. Small talk, fake smiles, men in tuxedos looking at my chest instead of my eyes. "You look like you'd rather be doing your taxes," a voice said. I turned around. He was tall. That was the first thing I noticed. Dark hair, slightly graying at the temples, distinguished. Deep blue eyes that crinkled at the corners. He was holding 2 glasses of champagne. "Is it that obvious?" I asked. Painfully, he smiled. It was a warm smile. Not predatory. Just nice. "I'm Mark. I'm hiding from a donor who wants to talk to me about his yacht for another hour." "Save me?" I laughed. "I'm Sarah. And I'm hiding from everyone." We talked for 3 hours. We ignored the speeches. We ignored the auction. We just stood in the corner and talked. He told me he was an independent investment consultant. He said he helped people build futures. He asked me about EcoHaven, but he didn't ask how much money I made. He asked why I started it. He asked about my passion for sustainable materials. He listened. Really listened. By the time he walked me to my car, I was hooked. The courtship was a whirlwind. That's a cliché, I know, but it's the only word that fits. Mark was everything I was missing. He was attentive. He sent flowers to my office, not red roses, but lilies, because I mentioned once that they were my grandmother's favorite. He surprised me with weekend trips to vineyards. He cooked dinner for me. Real dinner. Risotto, grilled salmon, wine pairings. You work too hard, Sarah, he would say, massaging my shoulders after a long day. Let me take care of you. I had been taking care of myself, and everyone else, for 20 years. Hearing someone say, "Let me take care of you," was like a drug. I was addicted to it. 6 months later, he moved in. A year later, on a trip to Napa Valley, he proposed. He got down on one knee in the middle of a vineyard at sunset. The ring was huge. Vintage. "I want to build a life with you," he said, tears in his eyes. "I want to be the foundation you stand on." I said yes. Of course I said yes. I thought I had won the lottery. I had the career, and now I had the man. But looking back, the red flags were there. They were small, like tiny cracks in a windshield, easy to ignore until the whole thing shatters. Mark never seemed to have active clients. He was always between projects or consulting on a private equity deal that he couldn't discuss because of NDAs. He paid for things, sure, but always with cash or vague transfers. Then came the help. It was a Tuesday night, about 2 months after we got married. I was at the dining table, surrounded by receipts and tax forms. Ecohaven was expanding, and the paperwork was drowning me. Mark walked in, pouring 2 glasses of red wine. He set one down next to me and kissed the top of my head. "You look stressed, babe," he said. "I am," I sighed, rubbing my temples. "My accountant is overwhelmed, and I'm trying to organize these personal assets for the new mortgage application on the warehouse. It's a mess." Mark sat down opposite me. He picked up a bank statement. "Why are you doing this? You're the CEO. You should be focusing on the creative vision, on the big clients. This grunt work? This is beneath you." "I know, but I have to trust the person handling my personal accounts," I said. Mark reached across the table and took my hand. His thumb stroked my knuckles. "Trust me," he said softly. "Sarah, this is what I do. I'm a financial consultant. Let me handle the personal accounts. Let me handle the investments. I can optimize your portfolio, manage the bills. You shouldn't be worrying about the electric bill or the property tax. You should be worrying about changing the world." It sounded so logical. So loving. "Are you sure?" I asked. "It's a lot of work. Ideally, I'd love to help with the company books too, eventually," he said casually, taking a sip of wine. "But let's start with the household. I want to contribute, Sarah. You make the big money. Let me manage it so it grows. It makes me feel useful. Like a real partner." My heart melted. He felt insecure about my income. He wanted to feel like an equal. How could I say no? "Okay," I said. "Thank you, Mark. You're amazing." I gave him the passwords. I added his name to the checking accounts. I gave him power of attorney for investment purposes. I effectively handed him the keys to the vault, and I thanked him for taking them. For the next year, everything seemed fine. Better than fine. I stopped worrying about bills. Mark would give me monthly updates, colorful pie charts and graphs showing our investments growing. "Look," he'd point to a line going up. "I moved some capital into high-yield bonds. We're up 8% this quarter." I didn't check the actual bank apps. I trusted the pie charts. I trusted my husband. The illusion was complete. I was the queen of my empire, and he was my loyal knight. Or so I thought. The first crack didn't come from Mark. It came from the person I trusted even more than him. My younger sister, Jessica. Jessica was 7 years younger than me. We had grown up poor, single mom, food stamps, the works. I had always been the protector. When I started EcoHaven, the first thing I did was hire Jessica. She had a degree in accounting, but she had bounced around jobs, never really finding her footing. I made her my head bookkeeper. I paid her 6 figures, double what she would make anywhere else. I bought her a car. I paid off her student loans. She was my baby sister. Jessica loved Mark. They got along famously. At family barbecues, they would sit together, drinking beers and laughing at inside jokes. I thought it was sweet. I was happy my husband and my sister were friends. "You're so lucky, Sarah," Jessica would tell me, looking at Mark with wide eyes. "He's such a catch. Most guys with his looks are jerks. But he really gets it." "Gets what?" I asked. "Gets what we came from," she said. "He knows what it's like to want more." One afternoon in November, I was in my office reviewing the quarterly budget for a new sustainable housing project. I needed to move some liquidity from the operating account to the project escrow. I logged into the main company portal. I froze. The balance was lower than I expected. About $50,000 lower. I blinked, refreshing the page. Maybe a vendor payment had cleared early? I clicked on the transaction history. There were 5 withdrawals labeled consulting fees external. Each for $9,900. Just under the $10,000 threshold that triggers an automatic bank flag to the IRS. I frowned. We didn't have any external consultants on this project. I picked up the phone and called Jessica. "Jess, can you come to my office? Bring the ledger." Jessica walked in 5 minutes later. She looked tight. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. She was clutching her tablet like a shield. "Hey, sis. What's up?" she asked, sitting down. "I'm looking at the operating account," I said, turning my screen toward her. "What are these consulting fees? Who are we paying 50 grand to?" Jessica didn't look at the screen. She looked at her fingernails. "Oh, that's the optimization project." "What optimization project?" "Mark suggested it," she said quickly. "Mark?" I sat up straighter. "Mark doesn't work for EcoHaven, Jess." "Why is Mark authorizing payments?" "He didn't authorize them, I did," Jessica said, her voice going up an octave. Defensive. He looked at our overheads last month when we were having dinner. He said we were overpaying on shipping. He recommended a logistics auditor. That's the fee." "Who is the auditor?" I asked. "Where is the invoice?" "I have it on my computer," she said, standing up. "I'll email it to you." "God, Sarah, relax. It's saving us money in the long run. You're always so paranoid." "Paranoid?" I was the CEO asking about $50,000 of missing cash. That night, I went home and asked Mark about it. He was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables. He looked so calm. "Oh, yeah," he chuckled, not even looking up from the cutting board. "I told Jess she needed to tighten up the shipping contracts. I referred her to a guy I used to work with in Chicago. He's expensive, but he'll save you triple that amount by Q2. I thought I was helping. He turned to me, wiping his hands on a towel. His face was open, innocent. "Did I overstep?" "I'm sorry, Sarah." Jess seemed stressed about the margins, so I just offered a contact. I felt a pang of guilt. Here he was, trying to help my business, trying to help my stressed-out sister, and I was interrogating him like a criminal. "No," I said, softening. "No, it's fine. I just..." I need to see the paperwork next time, okay? I can't have money moving without my sign-off. Of course, he kissed my forehead. I'll stay in my lane. Promise. I let it go. That was my mistake. I let it go because I wanted to believe them. I wanted to believe that my husband and my sister were a team helping me, not a team conspiring against me. But the feeling didn't go away. It sat in my gut like a cold stone. A few weeks later, I noticed something else. Small things. Jessica started wearing new clothes. Expensive clothes. A Balenciaga bag here, a pair of Louboutin heels there. Nice shoes, I commented one day. Oh, these? She laughed nervously. Knockoffs. Can you believe it? Amazon. $50. They weren't knockoffs. I know quality leather. I know the red sole. Then, the late-night texts. Mark's phone would buzz at 11 p.m. 11:30 p.m. He would glance at it and flip it over. Who is it? I asked one night in bed. Spam, he mumbled. Robot texts. One night, while he was in the shower, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. I'm not a snooper. I respect privacy. But the gut feeling was screaming at me. I glanced at the lock screen. It was a message from Jay. She suspects nothing. But we need to move the next batch soon. She's watching the OPEX account. My blood turned to ice. Jay? Jessica? Move the next batch? I stared at the phone. I didn't know the passcode. Mark had changed it recently. Security update, he had said. I put the phone back exactly how it was. My hands were trembling. I laid in bed that night, listening to the shower run, staring at the ceiling fan spinning round and round. My mind was racing. No. It can't be. Not Jessica. She's my sister. She wouldn't. Maybe Jay was a broker? Maybe batch meant stocks? I was bargaining. I was trying to find any explanation that didn't involve the two people I loved most in the world stabbing me in the back. But the seed was planted. And once the seed of doubt is planted, it grows fast. I decided to play dumb. I decided to watch. If I had confronted them right then, I might have lost everything. They would have covered their tracks. They would have gaslighted me into thinking I was crazy. No. I needed proof. But I wasn't prepared for what I would find. I thought they were stealing money. I thought it was simple embezzlement. I didn't know it was so much worse. December 12th. Our second wedding anniversary. I had been in Chicago for a 3-day conference on sustainable urban planning. I was supposed to fly back on the 13th. But I wanted to surprise Mark. I had bought him a watch. A vintage Omega, something he had been drooling over for months. I finished my meetings early, changed my flight, and landed in Austin at 4 p.m. I didn't call him. I wanted to see the look on his face when I walked through the door. I stopped at the gourmet market and bought steaks, truffles, and a bottle of a ridiculously expensive Cabernet. I drove up the winding road to our house, feeling a mix of excitement and anxiety. The anxiety had been my constant companion for weeks, ever since that text message. But today, I pushed it down. It's our anniversary, I told myself. Don't ruin it, Sarah. I pulled into the driveway. There was a car there. A silver Lexus. Jessica's car. I frowned. Why was Jessica here? It was 5 p.m. on a Tuesday. She should be at the office closing the payroll. Maybe she was dropping off a gift? Maybe they were planning a surprise for me? I parked quietly on the street so I wouldn't alert them. I grabbed the wine and the gift bag. I walked up the driveway. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I unlocked the front door. It opened silently. Mark? I called out softly. No answer. I saw Jessica's purse on the kitchen counter. Her keys were next to it. Then I heard it. Laughter. Coming from upstairs. It wasn't the kind of laughter you hear when people are watching TV. It was intimate. Low. Throat-why. My stomach dropped to my feet. I dropped the grocery bags on the floor. The bottle of wine shattered. Red liquid pooled across the white marble floor like blood. The noise startled them. The laughter stopped. Hello? Mark's voice. He sounded panicked. I didn't answer. I walked toward the stairs. My legs felt heavy, like I was walking through water. I climbed the stairs, one by one. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. Thump. 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 I reached the bedroom door. It was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. The image is burned into my brain. I wish I could scrub it out, but I can't. Mark was scrambling to pull on a pair of boxers. Jessica was sitting on the edge of my bed, pulling her blouse closed. My sister. My baby sister. She looked up at me. And the look on her face wasn't shame. It wasn't fear. It was annoyance. You're early, Jessica said. I couldn't breathe. I looked at Mark. He was red-faced, standing by the window. Sarah, he started, putting his hands up. Sarah, wait. It's not what it looks like. It's not what it looks like? I whispered. My voice sounded strange, like it was coming from someone else. You are naked. With my sister. In my bed. On our anniversary. Mark's face shifted. The panic disappeared, replaced by that cold, arrogant look I would see later in court. He stopped trying to cover up. He grabbed a robe and put it on, tying the sash slowly. Ideally, I wanted to tell you this differently, Mark said. Tell me what? I screamed. That you're sleeping with my sister? That we're in love, Jessica said. She stood up, buttoning her jeans. She walked over to Mark and stood next to him. A united front. In love? I stared at them. You're sick. Both of you. You're my sister, Jess. I bought you that car. I paid off your loans. I gave you a job when no one else would hire you. Yeah, you gave me a job, Jessica spat. You made me your employee. You always have to be the queen, don't you, Sarah? Queen Sarah, saving the poor little sister. Throwing me crumbs while you live in this mansion. I recoiled. Crumbs? I pay you $120,000 a year. It's not about the money. Jessica yelled. It's about respect. You treat me like a child. Mark treats me like a woman. I looked at Mark. Is this true? You love her? Mark laughed. It was a cruel, dry sound. Love? Let's not get sentimental, Sarah. Jessica appreciates me. You? You just tolerate me. You're married to your company. I'm just an accessory you wear to galas. Get out, I said. Get out of my house. Both of you. Mark didn't move. He leaned against the dresser and crossed his arms. Actually, he said calmly. You should probably leave. Excuse me? This is my house too, Mark said. Community property. Texas law. And frankly, your screaming is upsetting me. I bought this house before I met you. I yelled. And we refinanced it together last year, remember? Mark smirked. To get that lower interest rate? My name is on the deed, sweetheart. I felt dizzy. The room was spinning. I'm calling the police, I said, reaching for my phone. Go ahead, Mark said. Tell them what? That your husband is cheating? That's not a crime. It's a civil matter. But if you attack us? If you throw something? That's domestic violence. I could have you arrested. I looked at Jessica. She was looking at the floor now, playing with her hair. Jess? I asked. Please. She looked up. Her eyes were hard. He's right, Sarah. You should go. You need to cool off. I realized then that I was outnumbered. I was alone in my own bedroom with two strangers who hated me. I turned around and ran. I ran down the stairs, slipping on the spilled wine in the hallway. I didn't care. I grabbed my purse. I ran out the front door, into the cool evening air. I got into my car. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't get the key fob to work at first. Finally, the engine started. I backed out of the driveway. I looked up at the bedroom window. I saw the curtain move. They were watching me. I drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove. Tears were streaming down my face, blurring the road. I was screaming inside my car, a primal scream of rage and grief. My husband. My sister. My money. My home. Gone. All gone in the span of 10 minutes. But I didn't know yet that they hadn't just taken my husband and my sister. They had set a trap that was about to snap shut on my entire life. I checked into a Marriott downtown. It was 8 p.m. I sat on the edge of the stiff hotel bed, staring at the beige wall. I felt numb. The screaming was over. Now came the shock. I needed to protect the money. That was the first rational thought I had. If they are together, and they have been moving money. I opened my laptop. I tried to log into our joint Wells Fargo account. Access denied. My heart stopped. I tried again. Incorrect password. I tried the forgot password link. Verification code sent to phone number ending in 8832. That was Mark's number. He had changed the recovery number. I quickly switched to my personal savings account. The one I had before the marriage. Balance, $42.15. I stared at the screen. There should have been over $200,000 in there. I clicked on recent transactions. Transfer to M&J Holdings LLC, $50,000, pending. Transfer to Crypto.com, $75,000, processed cash withdrawal, $10,000, processed. The list went on. He had drained it. He had drained it all while I was in Chicago. Panic set in. Real, terrifying panic. I logged into the EcoHaven business accounts. Thank God. Those were still accessible. But there were pending transfers scheduled for the next day. Consulting fees to random LLCs I had never heard of. Totaling nearly $500,000. He was trying to empty the company. I immediately called the bank's fraud department. I spent 2 hours on the phone, screaming, begging, faxing my driver's license. Finally, they froze the business accounts. We can freeze the business activity pending investigation, the agent said. But Mrs. Miller, regarding the joint personal accounts, since his name is on them, he has every right to move that money. There's nothing we can do. He stole it. I sobbed. It was my savings from before the marriage. Did you commingle the funds? The agent asked. I added him to the account, I whispered. Then it's a civil matter. You'll need a lawyer. A lawyer. Right. I hung up. My phone buzzed. An email. From Mark Miller, subject, divorce. I opened it. No text. Just an attachment. A PDF. It was a scanned copy of a petition for divorce. Filed that morning. He had filed for divorce while I was in Chicago. Before I even caught them. He knew I would find out eventually. Or maybe he didn't care. He was done with me. He had taken the money, and now he was discarding the husk. I read the petition. Grounds, irreconcilable differences. Assets requested, 50% of the marital home. Spousal support of $15,000 per month. 50% ownership of EcoHaven Solutions. I threw the laptop across the room. It hit the wall with a crack. He wanted half my company? He wanted alimony? My phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello? I answered, my voice shaking. Sarah Miller? A man's voice. Slick. Oily. Yes. This is Arthur Sterling. I represent your husband, Mark Miller. Go to hell, I said. Now, Sterling chuckled. There's no need for hostility. I'm calling as a courtesy. Mark wants this to be amicable. Amicable? He stole my life savings. He's sleeping with my sister. Allegedly, Sterling said. Listen, Sarah. We know about the irregularities in EcoHaven's tax filings. What irregularities? I asked. I pay my taxes. Do you? Sterling lowered his voice. Mark has been handling the books, hasn't he? And your sister? They have documentation. Emails. Ledgers. That suggests you have been funneling money offshore to avoid taxes. If this goes to a messy trial, all of that becomes public record. The IRS will be very interested. Your clients will be interested. EcoHaven's reputation will be destroyed. I couldn't speak. I wasn't funneling money. I was honest. But they were the ones handling the books. What are you saying? I whispered. Mark is offering a settlement, Sterling said. You give him the house. You give him a lump sum of $2 million. And you sign over 20% of the company profits for the next 10 years. In exchange, he walks away quietly. No IRS. No scandal. Jessica stays quiet. Blackmail. Pure and simple. You're crazy, I said. Think about it, Sterling said. You have 24 hours. Or we release the evidence to the press. He hung up. I sat there in the dark hotel room. I was broke. My husband was a con man. My sister was a traitor. And they were holding my company hostage with crimes they committed in my name. I curled up into a ball on the bed and cried until there were no tears left. I wanted to give up. I really did. I thought about just signing the papers. Just giving him the money to make it stop. But then, somewhere around 3 a.m., the crying stopped. I sat up. I walked to the bathroom and washed my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were puffy. My hair was a mess. I looked like a victim. No, I said to the reflection. I thought about Mark's smirk. I thought about Jessica's laugh. They thought I was weak. They thought I was just a creative who couldn't handle a fight. They forgot one thing. I built a $12 million company in a male-dominated industry. I deal with contractors, city planners, and difficult clients every day. I don't break. I solve problems. Mark was just a problem. A very expensive, very dangerous problem. I needed help. I couldn't do this alone. I needed someone who knew how to fight dirty. I grabbed my phone and searched for a name I had heard whispered among my business contacts. A man they said was difficult but effective. David Cross. Private investigator. Financial crime specialist. I dialed the number. It rang 4 times. Cross, a gruff voice answered. It sounded like he had been asleep, or smoking, or both. Mr. Cross, I said. My name is Sarah Miller. My husband is trying to steal my company. I have no access to my money. But if you help me destroy him, I will pay you double your rate when I win. There was a silence on the other end. Then a lighter flicked. Be at the Galaxy Diner on 5th Street in 30 minutes, he said. And bring cash for the coffee. I don't take checks from desperate women. The Galaxy Diner was a 24-hour greasy spoon with flickering neon lights and sticky tables. It was the last place you'd expect to find the CEO of a design firm, but at 4 a.m., it was the only place open. I spotted David Cross in a back booth. He looked like a retired linebacker who had seen too much bad weather. Broad shoulders, a face full of stubble, and eyes that scanned the room like a radar. He was wearing a faded leather jacket and drinking black coffee. I slid into the booth opposite him. I put $100 bill on the table. Coffee, I said. And your time. David looked at the bill, then at me. He didn't smile. You look like a wreck, lady. I feel like a wreck, I said. My husband emptied my accounts. He's sleeping with my sister. And his lawyer is blackmailing me with tax fraud that I didn't commit. David took a sip of coffee. The husband's name? Mark Miller. David stopped with the cup halfway to his mouth. He set it down slowly. Mark Miller, he repeated. Tall guy? Looks like a catalog model? Talks about investments but never explains what they are. Yes, I said, surprised. You know him? David let out a low, humorless laugh. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small notebook. He flipped through the pages. I don't know him as Mark Miller, David said. I knew him as Mark Davis in Chicago. And Mark Stone in Miami. My mouth fell open. What? He's a grifter, Sarah, David said. A pro. He targets successful, independent women in their late 30s or 40s. Women who are busy, lonely, and have assets. He plays the perfect partner. He gets access to the accounts. Then he drains them and moves on. Usually, he disappears before the divorce papers are even dry. He's done this before? 3 times that I know of, David said. I was hired by the second wife in Miami. We couldn't nail him. He's slippery. He creates layers of LLCs, moves the money through crypto, and leaves the wives holding the bag for tax evasion. By the time the IRS comes knocking, he's gone. I felt sick. It wasn't just a bad marriage. I was a target. I was a mark. But this time is different, I said, my voice hardening. He's not disappearing. He's staying. He wants half my company. He wants alimony. David raised an eyebrow. He's staying? That's new. Usually, he cuts and runs. He thinks he has leverage. I explained the threat about the IRS and the irregularities Jessica helped create. David nodded, rubbing his chin. He's getting greedy. Or maybe he thinks you're an easier target than the others. He thinks you'll fold to save your reputation. I won't fold, I said. I want to bury him. David looked at me. He studied my face, looking for weakness. This isn't a game, Sarah, he said seriously. If he's staying to fight, it means he has a plan. He probably has documents, forged or real, that bind you. He has your sister on the inside. This is going to get ugly. He will lie. He will humiliate you in court. He might even try to plant evidence on you. I don't care, I said. I built that company with my own 2 hands. I will burn it to the ground before I let him take a single share. David smiled. It was a terrifying smile. All right. I'm in. What do we do first? I asked. First, David said, leaning in. We stop acting like a victim. We start acting like a hunter. You need to play along. Let him think he's winning. Let him think you're scared. I am scared, I admitted. Good. Use that. Cry on the phone to him. Beg him for a deal. Make him arrogant. Arrogant men make mistakes. David pulled out a small device from his pocket. It looked like a USB drive. Does he still use the laptop at the house? Yes, I said. And your sister? Does she have a work computer? Yes. I need access, David said. Can you get me into the office at night? I have the master key, I said. And the house, he changed the locks, but the garage code is still the same. I hope. Tonight, David said. We go fishing. We need to see what evidence they claim to have. And we need to find where he hid the money. That night, my life as a spy began. I met David behind the Eco Haven office building at 2 a.m. I was wearing a black hoodie and sneakers. I felt ridiculous, like I was in a bad movie. But then I remembered the smirk on Mark's face, and the adrenaline kicked in. We sneaked into the office. It was eerie seeing the empty desks. We went to Jessica's office. David worked fast. He booted up her computer. He bypassed her password in about 30 seconds. Sloppy, he muttered. She used her birth year. He plugged in his drive and started copying files. Look at this, he whispered, pointing to a folder named Project M. He opened it. It was full of chat logs. Chats between Jessica and Mark. I read over his shoulder. Mark, August 12th, she's distracted with the Plaza project. Move another 20K. Jessica, August 12th, I'm nervous, Mark. What if the auditor catches it? Mark, August 12th, there is no auditor, babe. You are the auditor. Just cook the ledger. We'll be in Cabo by Christmas. Cabo, I whispered. They were planning to leave. Wait, David said. Look at this email draft. It was an email from Mark to his lawyer, Sterling. Subject, the partnership agreement body, Sterling, here is the draft. Make sure the date looks right. We need to backdate it to 2021. Jessica will witness it. Sarah never reads what she signs if I put it in a pile of other papers. He forged it, I gasped. He's planning to forge a partnership agreement. But did he? David asked. Or is he going to? The email is dated yesterday, I said. He hasn't done it yet. Or maybe he just did it. If he forged it, David said, his eyes lighting up. That's a felony. That's not just a divorce dispute. That's prison time. But how do we prove it? I asked. If he prints it out and puts a fake date on it, and Jessica swears she saw me sign it in 2021. It's my word against theirs. And my signature, he has samples of it everywhere. David pulled the USB drive out. We need the original document. If he presents a document in court, we need to get our hands on the physical paper. Not a copy. The paper. Why? Because, David grinned. Paper tells secrets. Ink tells secrets. If he created that document yesterday, but claims it's 3 years old, science can prove him wrong. We left the office before the security guard did his rounds. We sat in David's truck in the dark parking lot. Sarah, David said. We have the chat logs. That helps. But chat logs can be faked. If you want to destroy him, really destroy him, we need to catch him in the lie. We need to let him present that forged document to a judge. You want me to let him sue me? I asked. You want me to go to court? I want you to walk into that courtroom and look defenseless, David said. I want him to feel so safe that he puts that fake paper on the judge's bench. And then, we snap the trap. I looked at the Eco Haven building. My life's work. Okay, I said. Let's do it. The conference room at Sterling and Associates smelled like intimidation. It was a scent composed of old leather books that nobody read, lemon furniture polish, and the stale coffee of overworked paralegals. I sat on one side of the mahogany table. My lawyer, Rebecca, was next to me. On the other side sat Mark, looking bored, and Mr. Sterling, looking hungry. "We're wasting time," Sterling said, checking his Rolex. It was a gold submariner. I wondered if Mark had bought it for him with my money. "My client is prepared to settle, but Ms. Miller seems to be living in a fantasy world where community property laws don't exist." "We are not settling on your terms," Rebecca said sharply. "Because your terms are extortion." 50% of the company? A company Sarah founded 5 years before she met him? Sterling sighed. He opened a thick leather folder. "We were hoping to keep this amicable. But since you insist on playing hardball." He slid a single sheet of paper across the table. "Exhibit A," Sterling said. "The marital partnership agreement." I looked at the paper. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. It was a document titled Agreement of Shared Business Interest and Asset Distribution. I scanned the text. It was dense legalese, but the gist was clear. In exchange for consulting services and financial management, Sarah Miller grants Mark Miller a 50% equity stake in EcoHaven Solutions, effective immediately. And there, at the bottom, was my signature. It was blue ink. It was my loop. My slant. But it was the date next to it that made the room spin. June 15, 2021. And right below my signature, on the line marked witness, was another familiar scrawl. Jessica Davis. I felt bile rise in my throat. I looked up at Mark. He wasn't looking at me. He was inspecting his fingernails, a small, satisfied smile playing on his lips. "This is a forgery," I said. My voice was quiet, trembling with rage. "I never signed this. I have never seen this document in my life." "That's a serious accusation," Sterling said smoothly. "Do you deny that is your signature?" "It looks like my signature," I said. "But anyone can trace a signature. Technology can copy a signature." "And the witness?" Sterling raised an eyebrow. "Your own sister? Are you saying your sister is lying too?" I stared at him. "Yes. That is exactly what I am saying." "Well," Sterling closed his folder with a heavy thud. "That will be a difficult hill to climb in court, Ms. Miller. You see, we have a sworn affidavit from Jessica confirming she watched you sign this at your kitchen table on the morning of June 15, 2021. She recalls you were wearing a blue silk robe. She recalls you drinking Earl Grey tea." Specifics. They were adding specifics to make the lie taste like truth. "June 15, 2021, I whispered. I tried to access my memory. Where was I? That was 2 years ago. If you go to court," Sterling leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "we will present this. And when the judge sees that you are trying to renege on a signed contract, you won't just lose half the company. You'll lose credibility. You'll look like a bitter ex-wife trying to cheat her partner. We will ask for attorney's fees. We will ask for damages. We will bleed you dry." He pushed a second document toward me. "A settlement agreement." "Sign this instead," Sterling said. "Give him the 2 million. Give him the house." We walk away. The partnership agreement disappears. I looked at the settlement. Then I looked at the forgery. It was a perfect trap. If I fought it, they would use the forgery to take half the company, worth 6 million. If I settled, I lost 2 million and my home. Mark finally looked at me. His eyes were cold, dead things. "Just sign it, Sarah. Don't be stupid. You're outmatched." I thought about David Cross. I thought about the text messages. Just cook the ledger. If I signed the settlement, they won. They got away with stealing my money, sleeping in my bed, and laughing at me. I stood up. My legs felt shaky, but I locked my knees. "I need 48 hours to review this," I said. 24, Sterling countered. 48, I said. "Or we go to trial." Sterling looked at Mark. Mark shrugged. Let her have 2 days to cry about it. She'll sign. Fine, Sterling said. Friday at noon. If we don't have a signed settlement, we file the agreement with the court. I walked out of that office with my head high, but the moment the elevator doors closed, I slumped against the wall. I couldn't breathe. June 15, 2021. I needed to know where I was. I needed to know if I could prove I wasn't at that kitchen table. I pulled out my phone and called David. They have a document, I said, my voice cracking. Dated June 15, 2021. Witnessed by Jessica. Did you sign it? David asked. No. Never. Okay, David's voice was calm, grounding me. Meet me at the office. Don't go home. Don't talk to them. We have work to do. David's office was the opposite of Sterling's. It was a small room above a dry cleaner, filled with stacks of paper and the smell of stale cigarette smoke. But right now, it felt like the safest place on earth. We were digging through my digital life. June 15, 2021, David muttered, typing furiously on his laptop. Where were you? I was scrolling through my Google Photos. I don't know. It was a Tuesday. I was probably working. Check your calendar, David said. I opened my archived Outlook calendar. June 15, 2021. 9 a.m. staff meeting. 1 p.m. vendor call. I was working, I said. I was in Austin. That doesn't help, David said, rubbing his temples. Sterling said you signed it in the morning at your kitchen table. You could have signed it before work. I checked my credit card statements, I said. Maybe I was out of town? We checked. A charge for Starbucks near my office at 8:30 a.m. A charge for gas at the station near my house at 6 p.m. You were in town, David said grimly. You were within driving distance of your kitchen table. I put my head in my hands. So I have no alibi. It's my word against theirs. And they have a witness. Jessica, David spat the name out. She's the linchpin. If she swears she saw it, and the signature looks real. Sarah, a judge will likely believe the document. It's a notarized agreement? No, I said. Notarized? No. Just witnessed. Sterling said in Texas a contract doesn't always need a notary if there are witnesses. That helps, but not enough. David stood up and started pacing. Mark is arrogant, but he's not stupid. He picked a date where you were in town. He probably checked your old calendars before he drafted it. He stopped at his whiteboard, which was covered in photos of Mark and Jessica. Think, Sarah, David commanded. Look at the document again. I pulled the photo I had secretly snapped of the document in Sterling's office. Blue ink, I said. It looks like his pen. He always uses this specific pen. A Pilot G2. He's obsessed with them. He buys the expensive metal body ones. A Pilot G2, David repeated. He squinted at the photo. The signature looks fresh. What do you mean? I mean, ink fades, David said. Paper oxidizes. A document that sat in a drawer for 2 years looks different than one printed yesterday. But on a photocopy or a scan, you can't tell. And in that conference room, you only saw it for a minute. He turned to me, his eyes gleaming. If he forged it this week, David said, the ink is fresh. Chemical solvents in the ink take years to fully dry out. A forensic document examiner can tell the difference between ink that is 24 months old and ink that is 48 hours old. So we just need the document? I asked. We need the original, David said. But Sterling won't give us the original until the trial. And by then, it might be too late. Or Mark might lose it and rely on the scan. David zoomed in on the photo on his screen. Wait, he said. Look at the pen stroke. He pointed to a tiny blob of ink at the end of Mark's signature. That's a gel pen, David said. Heavy deposit. Pilot G2s are distinctive. But look at the color. It's not standard blue. It's darker. Almost navy black. He calls it midnight blue, I remembered. He buys special refills. David froze. He looked at me, and a slow, predatory grin spread across his face. Sarah, he said. Do you know exactly what pen he uses? Like, the specific model of the refill? I think so, I said. He orders them from Amazon. I used to see the boxes. Pilot G2 Limited Edition. Navy blue. 0.7 millimeters. David started typing furiously. Pilot G2. Navy blue, release dates. He stopped typing. He looked at the screen. Then he looked at me. Then back at the screen. He started laughing. It was a dry, raspy laugh. What? I asked. What is it? God bless corporate rebranding, David said. He turned the laptop toward me. On the screen was a press release from Pilot Pen Corporation. Introducing the new 2023 Navy Blue series. Enhanced formula. Vibrant color. The specific shade Navy Blue 2 was reformulated, David said, pointing at the date of the article. January 2023. Before that, they sold blue-black. But the new Navy Blue, the one with this specific color code, wasn't released until 6 months ago. I stared at him, trying to process the chemistry. So, I said slowly. If he used a new refill. If he used a refill he bought this year, David said, to sign a document dated 2021. The chemical composition of the ink will contain components that didn't exist in 2021. It's an anachronism, I whispered. Like seeing an iPhone in a movie about the 1990s. Exactly, David slammed his hand on the table. But we need proof. We can't just guess. We need to know for a fact that the ink on that paper is the new formula. How do we do that without the document? We need the pen, David said. We need the exact pen he used. If we can get the pen, we can analyze the ink in it. Then, we subpoena the document in court, run a spectrographic comparison, and boom. We catch him. He keeps that pen in his jacket pocket, I said. He never lets it go. It's his lucky signing pen. David looked at me. Then you need to get close to him, Sarah. You need to get close enough to steal a pen from a paranoid con man. I can't steal it, I said. He'll notice it's gone. He'll panic and destroy the document. You're right, David frowned. We can't take it. We need a sample. We need him to write something with it. Something we can take to the lab. He won't sign anything for me, I said. He hates me. He doesn't hate you, David corrected. He thinks you're defeated. He thinks he's won. When a narcissist thinks he's won, he gets sloppy. He gets generous. David pulled a small, blank index card from his drawer. You need to meet him, David said. One last time. To negotiate the settlement details. You play the broken woman. You cry. You tell him you'll sign, but you want one thing. A keepsake. A letter. Or you just get him to write down a figure on a napkin. And you? I asked. I'll be the guy at the next table, David said. Waiting for the handoff. I texted Mark. You win. I can't fight anymore. I'll sign the settlement. But I need to see you one last time. Please. Foreclosure. Meet me at Blackwood Coffee at 4 p.m. He replied in 2 minutes. Fine. Don't be late. Blackwood Coffee was perfect. It was busy, noisy, and dark. The kind of place where hipster baristas slammed portafilters and jazz music covered up conversations. I arrived at 3:50 p.m. I wore no makeup. I tied my hair back in a messy bun. I wore an old sweater. I needed to look like a woman who had given up. David was already there. He was sitting 2 tables away, wearing a baseball cap and reading a newspaper like an old man. He didn't look at me. Mark walked in at 4 p.m. sharp. He looked radiant. He was wearing a casual polo shirt that showed off his gym muscles. He looked like a man who was about to come into $2 million. He sat down opposite me without saying hello. "Do you have the papers?" he asked. "My lawyer is drafting the final version," I lied. My voice was shaky. I didn't have to act much, I was terrified. I wanted to ask you why." Mark sighed, rolling his eyes. "Sarah, we're not doing the emotional autopsy. It's business. We weren't compatible." "Was it Jessica?" I asked, letting a tear slip out. "Did you love her the whole time?" "It just happened," Mark said, leaning back. "She understands me. She doesn't treat me like an employee. I treated you like a king." I raised my voice slightly. People looked. Mark hated scenes. "Lower your voice," he hissed. "I'm giving you everything," I sobbed. "The house. The money. I want to know one thing. The partnership agreement. Why did you forge it?" Mark froze. He looked around. "I didn't forge anything," he said, his voice hard. "You signed it." "I didn't," I wiped my eyes. "But it doesn't matter now. I'm signing the settlement. You get what you want." I reached into my bag and pulled out a napkin. "I have one condition," I said. "For the settlement." "What?" "I want the furniture from the guest room," I said. "It belonged to my grandmother. And I want you to agree to let me keep the dog." "We didn't have a dog." I was improvising, trying to confuse him. "We don't have a dog, Sarah." "Are you crazy?" I want you to write down the account number where you want the money sent," I stammered. "So there are no mistakes." I don't trust the lawyers to get the wire instructions right. I pushed the napkin toward him. "Just write it down," I said. "Please. So I can end this nightmare." Mark looked at the napkin. He looked at me. He saw a broken, confused woman. He reached into his pocket. My heart stopped. He pulled out the pen. The Pilot G2 Limited. Metallic gray body. The clip was slightly bent. "You're pathetic," he muttered. He clicked the pen. Click. He pressed the tip to the napkin. Scratch. Scratch. He wrote a series of numbers. It was probably a fake account, or his offshore one. I didn't care. I watched the ink flow. That dark, navy blue ink. "There," he said. He capped the pen and tossed the napkin at me. He started to put the pen back in his pocket. "Wait," I said. "This pen." I reached out and touched his hand. He flinched. "You used this to write your vows," I said softly. "Do you remember?" Mark looked at the pen. For a second, a flicker of something, maybe guilt, maybe just memory, crossed his face. "Keep it," he said, sneering. He dropped the pen on the table. "I can buy 1,000 of them now." He stood up. "Have the papers signed by Friday, Sarah. Or I ruin you." He walked out. I sat there, staring at the pen. I didn't touch it. David slid into the seat opposite me. He pulled a plastic evidence bag out of his pocket. He used a napkin to pick up the pen and dropped it into the bag. He sealed it. "He gave it to you?" David whispered. "I thought we'd have to steal it." He's arrogant, I said, watching Mark's figure disappear through the glass door. He thinks I'm trash. He thinks the pen is trash. David held the bag up to the light. The ink inside the cartridge shimmered. This trash, David grinned, is going to hang him. Dr. Eris Thorne's lab was quiet, sterile, and white. It was in the basement of a university building, 3 hours away from Austin. David and I stood behind a glass partition while Dr. Thorne worked. Thorne was a small man with thick glasses and the intense focus of a watchmaker. He had extracted a tiny sample of ink from the pen. He had also taken the napkin Mark wrote on. This is chromatography, David explained to me. He's separating the components of the ink. Every ink has a chemical fingerprint. We waited for 3 hours. I paced the hallway. I drank bad vending machine coffee. I checked my phone. Sterling had emailed me 3 times asking for the draft. Finally, Dr. Thorne came out. He was holding a printout with jagged lines on it. Interesting, Thorne said. Good interesting or bad interesting? I asked. Very specific interesting, Thorne adjusted his glasses. The ink in this pen is indeed a pilot formulation. However, it contains a specific fluorescent taggant, compound R74. And? David urged. Compound R74 was introduced into the manufacturing process to improve flow and prevent drying, Thorne said. I consulted the manufacturer's chemical safety data sheets. This specific formula was put into production in November 2022. It hit the shelves in January 2023. I felt my knees go weak with relief. So, I said. If a document is dated June 2021, it is chemically impossible for this ink to have been used, Thorne said. Unless your husband is a time traveler. But wait, I said, a wave of panic returning. How do we prove he used this pen on the forged document? He could say he used a different pen back then. That, Thorne smiled, is the second part of the analysis. David told me you have a high-resolution scan of the forgery? Yes. I analyzed the spectral response of the ink on the scan, Thorne said. It matches the spectral signature of the ink in this pen. The density, the absorption rate, the color value. It is a 99.9% match. If we can get the original document in court and run a non-destructive Raman spectroscopy test, we can prove it definitively. But even with the scan and the pen, the probability that he used 2 different pens with identical rare chemical profiles years apart is astronomically low. David clapped his hands together. We have him. We have the gun, the bullet, and the ballistics. Can you write a report? I asked Thorne. A report that a judge will understand? I can, Thorne said. I will testify. I hate forgers. They make a mockery of history. We drove back to Austin in silence. But it wasn't the terrified silence of the drive to the hotel. It was the silence of a hunter waiting in the brush. Now what? I asked David. Now, David said, we set the trap. You tell Sterling you're not signing the settlement. You tell him you'll see him in court. They'll file the forgery, I said. They'll make it public. Exactly, David said. We need them to commit. We need them to walk into that courtroom, swear on a Bible, and present that document as evidence. Once they do that, there's no going back. It's perjury. It's fraud. I took a deep breath. I'm ready. The next morning, I sent the email. To Arthur Sterling CC, Mark Miller subject, settlement Mr. Sterling, I have reviewed your offer. I reject it. I will not be bullied. If Mark wants half my company, he can explain it to a judge. I will see you in court. Sarah. The response was immediate. My phone blew up. Mark called me 10 times. I didn't answer. Then came the texts. Mark, you are making the biggest mistake of your life. Mark, everyone is going to know about your tax fraud. Mark, Jessica is going to testify. She will destroy you. Mark, have fun living in a cardboard box. I screenshotted every single one. Harassment. Intimidation. The court date was set for 2 weeks later. An emergency hearing for temporary orders and asset division. Those 2 weeks were the longest of my life. Mark made good on his threats. He leaked a story to a local business blog, EcoHaven CEO accused of embezzlement in divorce battle. My clients called me, panicked. Investors pulled out of meetings. My reputation was taking hits. Hold the line, David told me every day. Let them throw mud. It will all wash off when the truth comes out. I went to the office every day. I ignored Jessica. She walked past me in the hallway with her head high, smirking. She thought she was untouchable. One day, I found her in the break room. You don't have to do this, Jess, I said. I wanted to give her one last chance. One tiny chance to save herself. She stirred her coffee. Do what, Sarah? Tell the truth? The truth? I looked at her. You know you didn't sign that paper in 2021. You know it's a lie. If you lie in court, you can go to jail. Jessica laughed. Mark told me you'd try to scare me. You're desperate. Just give it up, Sarah. You had your turn. It's our turn now. Our turn? I shook my head. He's using you, Jess. Just like he used me. He loves me, she hissed. And we're going to be rich. And you're going to be nothing. I looked at her. My little sister. The girl I taught to ride a bike. The girl I held when she got her heart broken in high school. She was gone. Consumed by greed and jealousy. Okay, I said softly. I'll see you in court. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my living room, the furniture Mark wanted to take, and looked at the folder. Inside was Dr. Thorne's report. The timeline of the ink. The photos of the pen. The screenshots of the texts. It was a bomb. And I was about to detonate it. We are back in the courtroom. The air conditioner is humming. The smell of floor polish is nauseating. Mark has just finished his testimony. He sits down, looking like a victorious gladiator. He winks at me again. Judge Harrison looks at Sterling. Call your next witness. We call Jessica Davis, Sterling announces. The doors open. Jessica walks in. She is wearing a modest gray dress. She looks innocent. Young. Vulnerable. She takes the stand. She swears to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Ms. Davis, Sterling asks. What is your relationship to the parties? Sarah is my sister, Jessica says, her voice trembling slightly. And Mark? Mark is my partner. You work for EcoHaven? Yes. I am the head bookkeeper. I'm showing you Exhibit A, Sterling points to the forged document on the screen. Do you recognize this? Yes, Jessica says. I witnessed it. Tell the court what happened. Jessica takes a deep breath. She looks at me. And then she lies. It was June 15, 2021. I went to Sarah's house for breakfast. Mark had drafted the agreement. He said it was only fair since he was doing so much work for the company. Sarah agreed. She said she couldn't run the business without him. She signed it right there on the kitchen island. Then she asked me to sign as a witness. Are you certain of the date? Yes, Jessica says firmly. It was 2 days before my birthday. I remember because Sarah gave me my present early. A nice touch. A detail to anchor the lie. Thank you, Sterling says. Your witness. Rebecca stands up. No questions for this witness at this time, Your Honor. But we reserve the right to recall her. Judge Harrison looks surprised. No questions? She just corroborated the document that destroys your client's case. We will address the document directly, Rebecca says. Jessica steps down. She walks past Mark, and they touch hands. A victory lap. Ms. Miller, Judge Harrison says to me. Your lawyer said you have evidence to the contrary? Yes, Your Honor, Rebecca says. We call Dr. Eris Thorne. The door opens. Dr. Thorne walks in, carrying a briefcase. He looks out of place in the courtroom, like a scientist who got lost on the way to a lab. Mark frowns. He whispers to Sterling. Who is that? Sterling shrugs. He doesn't know. Dr. Thorne, Rebecca begins after he is sworn in. Please state your occupation. I am a forensic document examiner and a professor of chemical spectroscopy at the University of Texas, Thorne says. And what were you asked to analyze regarding this case? I was asked to analyze the ink composition of a pen belonging to Mr. Mark Miller, and to compare it to the electronic scan of Exhibit A. Sterling stands up. Objection. Ambush witness. We have no report. The report was filed this morning, Counselor, Judge Harrison says, holding up a file. I have it right here. Sit down. Mark shifts in his seat. The smirk is fading. Dr. Thorne, Rebecca asks. What did you find? I performed a chromatographic analysis of the ink, Thorne says. He pulls out a large chart and places it on the easel. The ink is a specific formulation of Pilot G2 gel ink, color navy blue 2. And is there anything unique about this ink? Yes. It contains a chemical tagant known as R74. This tagant is a fluorescent marker used for quality control. When was R74 introduced into the ink? Thorne pauses. He looks directly at Mark. The manufacturer began adding R74 to the ink in November 2022. It was not available on the commercial market until January 2023. The courtroom is silent. Dead silent. So, Rebecca says clearly. Is it possible for a document signed in June 2021 to contain this ink? No, Thorne says. It is chemically impossible. It would be like finding a 2023 penny in a time capsule from 1950. And the signature on Exhibit A? Based on the spectral analysis of the scan provided by Mr. Sterling, Thorne points to the screen. The ink on that document matches the R74 profile. It glows under the specific UV frequency used to detect the tagant. Conclusion? The document was created after January 2023. It was backdated. Thank you. Rebecca sits down. The silence in the courtroom breaks. People start whispering. I look at Mark. His face. Oh, God, his face. The color drains out of it like someone pulled a plug. He is staring at the chart on the easel. His mouth is slightly open. The arrogance, the charm, the confidence, it's all gone. He looks like a cornered rat. Sterling is frantically reading the report the bailiff handed him. His hands are shaking. Mr. Sterling, Judge Harrison's voice is like a whip crack. Do you have any cross-examination? Sterling stands up slowly. He looks at his client. He looks at the judge. He knows. He knows he has been led into a perjury trap. I request a recess, Your Honor, Sterling stammers. Denied, Judge Harrison barks. Mr. Miller, stand up. Mark stands up. His legs look unsteady. Did you forge this document? The judge asks. No, Your Honor, Mark's voice is a squeak. Maybe I used a different pen, maybe the scientist is wrong. Dr. Thorne is the leading expert in the state, the judge says. She turns to Jessica, who is sitting in the gallery, looking terrified. Ms. Davis. You just swore under oath that you watched this document being signed in 2021. Do you want to amend your testimony? Because perjury carries a prison sentence of up to 10 years. Jessica bursts into tears. Ugly, loud sobbing. He made me do it, she screams. She points at Mark. He told me he would leave me if I didn't. He said it was just a piece of paper. He said Sarah deserved it. Jessica, shut up. Mark yells. Order. The judge bangs her gavel. Bailiff, take them into custody. What? Mark screams. You can't arrest me. This is civil court. Forging a document to defraud the court is a felony, Judge Harrison says, her eyes blazing. Perjury is a felony. Attempted grand larceny is a felony. I am holding you both in direct contempt, and I am referring this matter to the district attorney immediately. 2 bailiffs move forward. I sit there, clutching my folder. I watch as the bailiff grabs Mark's hands, the hands that used to hold mine, the hands that wrote those fake figures, and pulls them behind his back. Click. The sound of handcuffs. Mark looks at me. His eyes are wild. Sarah, he pleads. Sarah, tell them. It was a mistake. We can work this out. Sarah. I stand up. I walk to the railing. I look him in the eye. You're right, Mark, I say. My voice is steady. I did build the walls. And now, they're closing in on you. They drag him out. He is shouting, begging. Jessica is wailing, being led out behind him. The courtroom erupts. My mother is crying, but they are happy tears. Rebecca squeezes my hand. Judge Harrison looks at me. Her expression softens. Ms. Miller, she says. The partnership agreement is declared void. The motion for spousal support is denied with prejudice. And I am granting you full possession of the marital home and all Eco Haven assets. She picks up her gavel. Case closed. The next few hours were a blur of police statements and paperwork. I stood outside the courthouse. The sun was shining. It was a beautiful Texas afternoon. I saw them being loaded into the back of a police van. Mark was still arguing with the officer. Jessica had her head down, her shoulders shaking. I felt a pang of sadness for my sister. I really did. But she made her choice. She chose the con man over her family. She chose greed over loyalty. David Cross was leaning against his truck, smoking a cigarette. He looked satisfied. Nice work, boss, he said. We did it, I said. Thank you. Don't thank me, David said. Thank the Pilot Pen Corporation. Mark was denied bail. It turned out David was right, he was a flight risk. The district attorney dug into his past. They found the other wives. They found the trail of fraud in Miami and Chicago. The IRS audit threat? It was a bluff. There was no investigation. Mark and Jessica had just been moving money around to make it look like tax fraud to scare me. The consulting fees? They went straight into a crypto wallet controlled by Mark. Because we caught him so fast, and because the assets were frozen, I got most of the money back. Not all of it, he had blown a lot on gambling and luxury hotels, but enough. Jessica pleaded guilty. She testified against Mark in exchange for a reduced sentence. She got 3 years in minimum security. Mark? Mark went to trial. He tried to charm the jury. He tried to represent himself. It was a disaster. He was sentenced to 12 years for fraud, forgery, and money laundering. I went to see him once. In jail. Before he was transferred to prison. He was sitting behind the glass partition. He looked older. The gray in his hair was showing. He wasn't wearing an Armani suit. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit. You look good, Sarah, he said. He still tried to use that charm. I am good, I said. You know, he leaned in. We were a good team. If you had just shared. We weren't a team, Mark, I said. You were a parasite. And I was the host. And now, I'm cured. I stood up to leave. Wait, he said. The pen. What did you do with the pen? I smiled. I framed it, I said. It's hanging in my office. A reminder to always check the fine print. It's been 6 months since that day in court. Ecohaven is thriving. We just landed a contract to design a sustainable resort in Costa Rica. I'm busier than ever, but it's a different kind of busy. It's a happy busy. I hired a new accountant. A firm. Not a family member. I sold the house. I couldn't live there anymore. Too many ghosts. I bought a loft downtown. It has big windows and lots of light. No shadows. I'm dating again. But I'm taking it slow. And the first thing I ask? Can I see your driver's license? Just kidding. Mostly. I learned a lot. I learned that blind trust is dangerous. I learned that family isn't just blood, it's loyalty. And I learned that sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the one holding the biggest stick. Or in my case, the biggest pen. To anyone watching this who feels trapped. Who feels like they are being gaslighted, used, or underestimated. Wake up. Look at the details. Trust your gut. And never, ever let them see you bleed. Let them see you fight. I'm Sarah. I'm the CEO of Ecohaven. And I own 100% of my life. Thanks for listening. If you liked this story, hit the like button and subscribe. And remember, the devil is in the details. But so is the salvation.